This is Tuesday, November the 9th, 2021. The title of today's devotional is Warning. Today's liberties may seed tomorrow's failures. Our scripture reading, Proverbs chapter 2. I invite you to go to my website, www.heartofashepherd.com. You'll find there devotionals written on almost every one of the Proverbs found in the book of Proverbs. For today, however, scripture reading Proverbs chapter 2, verses 12 through 15 will be the setting of today's devotional that I've divided into two parts. The first part, Proverbs chapter 2, verses 12 through 13, I have titled, Be Wary of Liberties, Some Leaders Champion. Now, Solomon advised his son that godly wisdom will induce a man to be wary of two enemies. The first enemies are wicked men, Proverbs 2, 12 through 15. The second enemy, adulterous women, verses 16 through 19. For right now, though, our focus is going to be limited to Proverbs chapter 2, 12 through 15. Allow me to read to you that passage and then a little bit of an application. Proverbs 2, verse 12 through 13. Solomon writes, To deliver thee from the way, that is the path of the evil man, the wicked man, from the man that speaketh froward or lies or perverseness, who leave, they forsake, they abandon, they depart from the paths of justice, uprightness, to walk in the ways of darkness. Now, Solomon here exhorted his son to embrace godly wisdom and allow righteous discernment to set the course of his son's life. Now, such wisdom directs youth to not only recognize the character of the ungodly, but to turn from their counsel froward things. Now, as a personal application, the counsel of the wicked often comes from those who, to borrow an old adage, should know better. That is, the ones that are most tempting to a believer are often the ones that you trust. Men or women that are supposed to be men or women of godly character, and yet they have strayed from the paths of uprightness. And the Bible goes on in verse 13 here and says, And they departed to paths of darkness. The Apostle Paul challenged Timothy with a similar admonition, writing for 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 1, In the last days perilous times shall come. Verse 5 of 2 Timothy 3, why would these be perilous times? Because there would be some men who have a form of godliness, but denied the power thereof. I believe that we are living in that generation. Now, the danger is not from the world, although it is, but the danger is more so from those whom we trust. In every generation, there are leaders who forsake the paths of uprightness. They entice young people to indulge in, and I'm going to quote, gray areas that previous generations had steered from out of concern that they might inflame lust and induce sinful passions. There are some preachers who preach liberty and they boast an enlightened life, and yet they are the danger to godly youth who might be drawn away from the path of righteousness and godly discretion. They become in what Solomon cautioned in verse 13, men who have left the paths of the upright only to lead others astray and walk in the way of darkness. Now here's a closing thought for you on this first part of this devotional. Be careful, my friend. Now listen closely, because the liberties you trivialize today, the gray areas that you choose to live in, may enslave your children and your children's children. I am seeing that more and more in this day. that there are men in positions of authority, men in positions of spiritual leadership. Sometimes they are over schools, they're over churches, they're over, quote, Christian organizations. And they are the very ones that are in the position of influence to ultimately tempt godly youth away from the path of righteousness and the encouragement that their moms and dads and their churches have given them. Be careful. The liberty you take today, you may find will enslave your children and your children's children. I'll come back with a second devotional on the second half of today's study, which will be in Proverbs 2, verses 14 through 15. God bless and bye-bye.